Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or the Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be going in depth into my tight end start or sit decisions for week number 5 of the 2022 fantasy football season. Inside today's video, we'll be discussing every single matchup from Thursday Night Football all the way until Monday Night Football, and I'll be telling you guys whether I believe you should start or sit the tight ends in all of those games. But before we could get into things, I would like to ask that if you guys are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, you please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure that you do leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. And if you do want to follow me on Twitter, please do so at notorious FNTSY. I would also like to ask that if you guys have any questions about week number 5, to never hesitate to ask down below in the comment section. I love talking to you guys down there. So without further ado, let's get into my week number 5 tight end start or sit decisions. We begin with Thursday Night Football, the Indianapolis Colts at the Denver Broncos, and in this matchup, I don't want to be starting either of the main tight ends. Now, the Indianapolis Colts tight end, Mo Alley-Cox, does this thing about once or twice every single year where he has a huge game. Last week, the man scores 2 touchdowns, and what typically happens is people go to the waiver wire, they pick him up because they saw that huge game, they think he's the second coming of fucking Tony Gonzalez, they pick him up, and then the next week he ends up shitting the bed. Mo Alley-Cox has done this for years. Now, I'm not saying that he's a bad tight end by any means, but what he did last week isn't what he's going to do this week up against the Broncos. I can guarantee that he does this every single year, and people still fall for it. Mo Alley-Cox is fool's gold. He is best left on your bench. For the Broncos, they use a bunch of different tight ends. Albert Aquabonum, Albert O, is the main tight end of the group, but can you even really say he's the main tight end because he doesn't even get that much work? Russell Wilson is banged up right now. He's definitely going to be playing on Thursday Night Football, but Albert O is best left on your bench, and at this point, probably best left on your waiver wire. Next up, we move to the London game, the New York Football Giants at the Green Bay Packers. In this matchup, I'm willing to start Robert Tonyan, but Robert Tonyan is one of those starts where he is at the bottom of the barrel. If Robert Tonyan scores in this game up against the Giants, then hip hip hooray, he probably scores like 10 points, and he was a decent start. If he doesn't score a touchdown, he probably gets like 4 targets, 2 or 3 catches, and 40 yards, and he doesn't play all that well. But outside of the main couple of tight ends, things are incredibly risky week in and week out at the tight end position. Robert Tonyan has a bunch of upside because of the team that he is on, as well as the matchup up against the Giants, so I'm fine starting Robert Tonyan, but he is far from ideal. The rookie Daniel Bellinger has seen some work in this offense, and at points has looked pretty good. The problem is that if Daniel Jones doesn't play and Tyrod Taylor doesn't play, seems like Jake Fromm might be the starting quarterback of the team. This game might be incredibly brutal for the Giants, aside from Saquon Barkley, who, even if the Packers know they're just going to run the ball a million times, will probably still have a pretty decent game. But outside of Barkley, you don't want to be starting anyone from the Giants, and Daniel Bellinger is definitely a sit. Next up, we move to the main slate on Sunday, 1 p.m., beginning with the Pittsburgh Steelers at the No One Circles the Wagons like the Buffalo Bills. Now, Dawson Knox, prior to the season, he was a guy that I really talked up because, hey, he looked really good last year. And then right before the season starts, they give him this fat contract. They give him this big contract. And I'm thinking, all right, Dawson Big Bucks Knox is now going to be in the prime position to be better than last year, right? He had a good season last year, mainly because of the touchdown upside, because Josh Allen was throwing him so many touchdowns. But I was like, okay, maybe he builds on that because they gave him the big contract for a reason. They get rid of O.J. Howard, kick him out, and he goes to Houston. So it's going to be Dawson Knox time. And while it's been Dawson Knox time because he's the only tight end really seeing snaps on the team, he hasn't been very relevant at all for fantasy football. Now, he hasn't necessarily kicked you directly in the penis because he's putting up like 7-8 points a game, but he's never doing what he did last year where he could potentially put up 20, 25 plus points and for a week or two be an elite tight end. I just don't see that right now with Dawson Knox. But he is in such an incredibly easy cupcake matchup up against the Pittsburgh Steelers, and there are so many injuries to these Buffalo Bills wide receivers. Gabe Davis has been banged up. Jamison Crowder is out. Isaiah McKenzie may not play, so they're going to have to throw the ball to someone. So maybe this is the game where we see Dawson Knox look a little bit more like he did last season. Pat Freiermuth is going to be a start for me. He looked good with Mitch Trubisky. He even looked good when Kenny Pickett was in the game, so I think you want to be rolling with Pat Freiermuth going forward. Now, I'm definitely not too sure how many opportunities Freiermuth is going to get to score a touchdown because this Bills defense is probably going to lock the Steelers down, but Freiermuth will be seeing enough targets where he's definitely start worthy. Next up, we move to the LA Chargers at the Cleveland Browns, and in this game, I like both of these tight ends. Gerald Everett had a fantastic game last week up against the Houston Texans, and right now, Keenan Allen's availability is still up in the air. Now, last week I said he was going to play. The week before I said he was going to play, and I am now 0 for 2. And if I swing on the fact that I think he's going to play this week, I might fucking strike out and go 0 for 3. But at the end of the day, I'm still in the strong belief camp here that he is going to play. If he doesn't, that even more pushes my narrative towards Gerald Everett, because I was going to play Everett either way. Now, with Everett, you're definitely hoping for a touchdown. He's not some target hog in this offense like, say, Travis Kelce is in Kansas City, but there's not many tight ends like that. But when you have a tight end on such an elite offense like the LA Chargers, with Justin Herbert, the pervert, while he's even banged up, he's looking good. I think Gerald Everett is a must-start tight end every single week. David Njoku is also looking very solid. Now, the first couple of weeks of the season, things weren't looking so good. Then the week prior to last week, in week number 3, they play on Thursday Night Football, and he explodes up against the Pittsburgh Steelers, sees 1 million targets. And last week I said, look, I'm willing to start him up against the Falcons, but we might be in a situation where we get absolutely fucking bamboozled by David Njoku, because he has one great game where Jacoby Brissett really looks fucking good up against the Steelers, and maybe that target share decreases. It falls off the edge of the earth. Well, we saw last week up against the Falcons that David Njoku is still a key piece in this offense, so I'm going to continue to roll him out. Now, the LA Chargers the defense got rolled out like a blunt and smoked in that game, right? They did not look very good up against Davis Mills. I do think the Chargers defense is better than what we saw on Sunday, but I do think David Njoku gets it done because he will see a decent amount of volume in this game. Next up, we move to the Houston Texans at the Jacksonville Jaguars, and this game is just dead man's tight end here. O.J. Howard scores 2 touchdowns in week 1. People picked him up off the waiver wire, which I told people not to do, and then he hasn't done anything since. He seems like he's the main tight end in Houston. I think O.J. Howard does deserve some respect because of how good he was in Tampa a couple of years ago, but at the end of the day, do you really want to rely on O.J. Howard? The answer is no. Evan Ingram, one of those fool's gold players. He fooled us for the first 2 weeks into thinking Evan Ingram was that guy, that Evan Ingram is finally that guy that we thought he could be in New York. And then his target share has fallen off the edge of the earth. Now, could he bounce back? Yes, because he actually hasn't looked bad, but he just hasn't been given the targets that he was given early on. And without the targets, it's hard for me to want to start a player, especially at the tight end position. Next up, we move to the Chicago Bears at the Minnesota Vikings. And this was a player, Cole Kmet of the Bears, who I talked up all off season. I was talking about how, guys, look how clear this is. This is a crystal clear situation. Justin Fields has no one to throw it to besides Darnell Mooney. They have Equanimeous St. Brown, they have Byron Pringle, but none of these guys are of the skill set of Cole Kmet. So Cole Kmet is going to get force-fed the ball. They're going to throw the ball a decent amount in Chicago. They're going to be down in games. They're going to have to throw. And guess what? That was completely wrong because the team would rather just hand the ball off to Khalil Herbert or David Montgomery 1 million times. Could Cole Kmet potentially have a resurgence later on in the season if they start throwing the ball more? Yes. But until that's the case, until I see it, I need multiple weeks of evidence at this point. I need some MLA citation proof that Cole Kmet is actually going to be targeted until I want to start him. Irv Smith Jr. hasn't really been popping off on the stat sheet, but if there was ever a game to do it, it would be up against the piss-poor Chicago Bears defense. Next up, we move to the Detroit Lions at the New England Patriots. TJ Hawkinson took a dump on the chest of the Seattle Seahawks defense. That man went insane. There are only a couple of games every year where there's one player that truly breaks the slate. That truly, if you had him on your team, unless the rest of your team shit the bed in a huge way, you are going to win. TJ Hawkinson put the team on his back. Like Greg Jennings in that Madden 10 or 12 clip, if you know what I'm talking about. Greg Jennings, you know what I'm talking about. Everyone knows what I'm talking about. But TJ Hawkinson carried your team. Now, that was without DeAndre Swift. That was without Amon-Ra St. Brown. Now, Swift and St. Brown do not practice today on Wednesday. I don't think Swift is going to play. I think you are very optimistic if you think Swift's going to play. Could Amon-Ra St. Brown play? Yes. I think he could on Sunday. Something to monitor as well. If neither of them play, then TJ Hawkinson is a potential number one tight end yet again on the week. I think the Patriots defense will have some sort of an answer for him, but I still think he has a great game, even if Amon-Ra St. Brown is able to play. Hunter Henry was another one of those tight ends that are really talked up in the offseason, and things did not work at all. He was a touchdown monster last year. Mac Jones was feeding him in the red zone. Now it just turns out they just want to run the ball in the red zone, so it is what it is. Next up, we got the Seattle Seahawks at the New Orleans Saints. Now, if your league allows you to play Taysom Hill as a tight end, I will tell you that I am going to start him, assuming famous Jameis Winston doesn't play. Jameis Winston or Michael Thomas did not practice today on Wednesday. Now, could Jameis Winston play? Definitely, but if he doesn't play and we have to deal with the red rifle Andy Dalton yet again, that Taysom Hill is going to see snaps at quarterback. We got a report today out of the practice that Taysom Hill was getting snaps at quarterback, and the Seattle Seahawks defense is soft as baby shit, so I expect Taysom Hill to have a decent game. He doesn't really catch the ball. All it is they're going to snap the ball to him. He's either going to throw it or run it, and he has the upside to score a touchdown, just like he did last week up against the Minnesota Vikings in England. So I'm going to start Taysom Hill if he's allowed to be started as a tight end. If he's a quarterback, then you don't want to be starting him. Will Dissly, as well as Noah Fant of the Seattle Seahawks, are sits. Geno Smith actually loves throwing the ball to the tight end. The problem is it's so incredibly difficult to figure out which one of those guys is going to be seeing more work, which one's going to see the touchdown. Maybe it'll end up being both of them, but I just think it is too hard to predict to really want to roll them out with any confidence. Juwan Johnson is the other tight end for the Saints. He actually popped off a little bit early on in the season. Hadn't seen as many targets since. He's a guy that if you're in a deeper league, I can understand why you might want to start him, especially if Michael Thomas misses. But for right now, I'm definitely going to list him as a sit. Next up, we move to the Miami Dolphins at the New York Jumbo Jets. In this matchup, I will be firing up Tyler Conklin. Now, Tyler Conklin put up big numbers with Cool Joe Flacco and put up decent numbers with Zach Wilson, the MILF hunter himself, last week. Now, do I expect the numbers that he put up with Flacco to continue with Wilson? No, because Flacco loved to throw the ball to Conklin. But do I think that Conklin is such an integral piece in this offense that he's still going to see targets and enough to be valuable in fantasy? Yes, the Dolphins defense is banged up right now, and I think Tyler Conklin is able to be a safe tight end for you to start this week. Do I expect him to be a top 10, top 8 tight end? No. Could he squeeze his way into the top 14? Definitely. So I would start him. Mike Licky on my Gesicki hit the best gritty I've ever seen. That was the worst gritty I've ever seen a couple weeks ago in that game up against the Baltimore Ravens with Teddy Two Gloves under center. I find it incredibly hard to trust Mike Gesicki, and Mike Gesicki outside of that game hasn't really done shit, so he's definitely going to be a sit for me. Next up, we got the Atlanta Falcons at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and here is where we are going to go on a rant. This is probably going to be the longest part of today's video is when I talk about this matchup. We're going to be talking about Kyle Pitts. Now, this guy has fooled me once, he's fooled me twice, he's fooled me 3 times, he's fooled me 4 times. It's like he has slapped a fucking egg and shattered it on my head. It feels like I have been done dirty by Kyle Pitts. It was like that meme where it's like, you get a 4th round pick and I get whatever. So I gave Kyle Pitts, he was my 4th round pick. I get fucked in the ass relentlessly. That's what happened when I drafted Kyle Pitts. Now, I don't have him in any of my fantasy leagues, but it's still frustrating to see every single Sunday, especially in DFS. I always talk to myself, Galaxy Brain, Kyle Pitts hasn't been good. He has 1 decent game, time to play him. And then it's like he's invisible. It's like he's fucking John Cena out there. You can't see him. I'm gonna have to start putting missing posters out around my town. Like, where is Kyle Pitts? Where the fuck is Kyle Pitts? Call me. Call up my phone if you know where Kyle Pitts is. What is happening? Now, the same exact bullshit happened last season. Weeks 1 through 4, this guy was shitting the bed. This guy was atrocious. But after that, he started playing better and better and better and put up the most historic rookie season at the tight end position. So can Kyle Pitts bounce back? 100%. Will this be the week up against the Buccaneers? Probably not, but I'm going to keep playing him. Now, are there other tight ends I would play over him? Definitely. So if you have Kyle Pitts, ask down below in the comment section. He's not a top 5 tight end. He's closer to tight end 10 than he is to tight end 1 at this point. But I'm still going to roll him out because I believe the second I bench Kyle fucking Pitts, this dude is going to go absolutely insane. Now, again, I don't think it's going to be this week up against the Bucs, but I do think you still got to roll him out. Cameron Brate got a concussion in the first half, but he plays the first half, and then they take him out in the second half. Makes a lot of sense, right? Makes a lot of sense. Cade Otton would be the starting tight end if Brake can't go. I don't think I want to be starting him either. Next up, we move to the Les Titans at the Washington Commanders. In this game, we'll keep it short like Kyler Murray here. Austin Hooper is going to be a sit. He was one of those guys that on Underdog, the sponsor of today's video, I would take him in like the 17th to 18th round, take a deep shot from 3, Stephen fucking Curry style. And I was thinking, you know what, man? Tannehill targets tight ends. They don't really have that many red zone weapons aside from Derrick Henry. So, hey, maybe Hooper scores a touchdown every couple weeks, and then he ends up in my best ball lineups a couple of times a year, and that's fine with me in the 18th round, right? What else could you expect out of an 18th round pick? Most of the time in best ball, your 18th round pick never even cracks your lineup once. So, hey, if you can crack my lineup a couple times, that would make me very, very happy. But, obviously, that hasn't ended up happening. They have another tight end there. I believe his name is Jeff Swaim. If that's not his name, then I apologize. He scored touchdowns. It sucks, but it is what it is. Hooper's a sit. Logan Thomas is on the fringe of being a start. He's almost peeking his head out over to be a start. He's a decent player. His usage is a little bit concerning, but again, I think he's talented enough to be a start in positive matchups. I'm just not too sure this is the most positive matchup. He's kind of in that Robert Tonyan range. So if you said, Nick, I'd rather play Logan Thomas over Robert Tonyan, I'm not going to make an argument with you. Next up, we move to the San Francisco 49ers at the Carolina Panthers. But before we break this game down in depth at the tight end position, I would like to ask that if you guys are new to the channel and you have ended up enjoying thus far, we're about 15-ish minutes into the video, please make sure you do hit that subscribe button down below, as well as hit that like button. It helps me out a ton. And again, remember that if you have any questions about week number 5, just ask down below in the comment section. I love talking to you guys down there. I try to get to the questions as soon as possible, but normally during the day when I'm working on all these videos I don't answer, I tend to typically answer closer to the nighttime. And I would also like to give you guys a quick word from our friends and our sponsor of today's video. Pointed to them right now. They've been on the screen this whole video. I referenced them a couple seconds ago. Underdog Fantasy. Now, Underdog Fantasy is a best ball website, and they offer a week 6 through week 17 best ball resurrection tournament. From week 6 through 17, like I just said, $100,000 to first place, $500,000 in total prizes, and it is only $10 to enter. Now, the reason why I personally like best ball so much is because it's all the fun of fantasy football without the bad things, without the hassle. You get to draft your team, and that's really it. You draft your team, and then you don't have to worry about doing trades. There's no trades. There's no waiver wire. And Underdog automatically sets your lineup for you at the end of the week with your highest scorers. So, for instance, if you have George Kittle and some other tight end, and George Kittle shits the bed this week, like he's done the last couple of weeks, and guess what? That other tight end that plays better than George Kittle will go into your lineup, and you won't have felt like a dumbass because you started the wrong tight end and lost your week. So make sure you guys do check that out. Promo code Stokastic, STOKASTIC, for a $100 first match deposit bonus. So you deposit $100, they'll give you an additional $100, which is 10 free entries into the Best Ball Resurrection Tournament. I plan on spamming a bunch of those drafts this weekend when I have more time. I'm going to the Post Malone concert on Friday, so I won't have much time on Friday, but on Saturday, I'll try to sit down and bang a couple of those out before week number 6 begins. So make sure you guys do check that out. 49ers at Panthers, back on into things. And I don't want to rant really long on the Panthers here because their tight ends are not very relevant at all. But the Panthers are a unmitigated disaster. They're like that gif of the dumpster. Have you ever seen this where the dumpster's on fucking fire and it's just being pushed by the water through the streets? That's what the Carolina Panthers are. It's really a shame. Ian Thomas and Tommy make that ass tremble. Could have a good game every once in a while, but they have 2 tight ends that they use. So are you really going to want to invest in that in fantasy? The answer is no, especially when this offense is hard to watch. Like, you might be better off just watching your fucking paint dry in your room. George Kittle is going to be a start. George Kittle has not been proficient in the last 2 games. George Kittle hasn't been great, but he's also George Kittle, and he's playing up against the Panthers. So I wouldn't get too nervous about Kittle yet. Now, if he underperforms against the Panthers, then it's time to panic. I mean, with Jimmy Garoppolo under center, Jimmy G-Spot, Jimmy Guap loves to throw the ball to George Kittle. So I think we're just kind of getting close to where that breakout game, not a breakout game, right? Because he broke out years ago, but that huge game is going to happen for this season. Next up, we move to the Philadelphia Eagles at the Arizona Cardinals, a revenge game. You guys know I love the revenge games. If you've been watching for a while, I'm a big revenge game narrative guy. revenge game for Zach Ertz up against the Cardinals. Now, I'm not even sure it's technically revenge because it actually like reinvigorated this man's career. He was looking like a dumpster fire at the end of his career in Philadelphia. It was like, oh, Goddard's going to take over. And now, boom, they both get to be starting tight ends on their team. So I'm sure at the end of the day, Zach Ertz is just fine in Arizona. But in my head, he's pissed. He's fucking feisty. He's ready to skull fuck the Philadelphia Eagles. Both these guys are top 6 tight ends in my rankings this week. Dallas Goedert has been incredible. He actually leads the tight end position, I believe, in yards after contact, the yak. So I think that Dallas Goedert should be a good start up against a not-so-hot Cardinals defense. Zach Ertz could struggle in this game because the Eagles defense is legitimately good and might just be the best defense in the National Football League, but I still do think that you want to start him because of that touchdown upside he has. And until DeAndre Hopkins returns, I think Zach Ertz is going to be a very vital piece, a key piece in this Cardinals offense. Next up, we move to the Dallas Cowgirls at the LA Rams. In this matchup, I'm going to be firing up Tyler Higbee with supreme confidence for the LA Rams. Now, even though Matthew Stafford has been awful, he has been terrible. Like, there's so many words to use that you could describe this guy as. He fucking sucks. And I talked about this in the quarterback video when I was talking about Matthew Stafford. This Super Bowl hangover has lasted weeks. I understand the 49ers own him in the regular season, but they should be more competitive in these games. The 49ers it felt like the 49ers beat them by 27. It literally did. Like, I know the score wasn't like that, but it felt like the Rams got hit harder than that fucking protester holding the pink thing that ran onto the field and got leveled by Bobby Wagner. That's what it felt like the 49ers did to the Rams. And speaking of that protester is suing Bobby Wagner. That's a good way to waste a lot of money, suing Bobby Wagner when you fucking are just running onto the field, which is trespassing. You're bound to get laid out, so shout out to Bobby Wagner. I respect that. But Tyler Higbee, even though Matthew Stafford has been dick cheese for fantasy football, Tyler Higbee and Cooper Kupp are still eating. So I'm pretty comfortable playing Tyler Higbee here. Dalton Schultz, he's a guy I really liked in the offseason, clearly banged up. Maybe he gets better as the weeks go on, but right now I think he's best left on your bench. Next up, we move to Sunday Night Football. The Cincinnati Bengals at the Baltimore Ravens. And I hope no one got mad when I called them the Cowgirls. It's obviously a joke. I don't actually even hate the Cowboys. I'm a Dolphins fan, so it is what it is. I was just making a joke. So don't get too mad, Dallas fans. I like Dak Prescott a ton. So Bengals at Ravens. I like both tight ends here. Hayden Hurst has been surprisingly good. Like, this is one of those teams where you could have made the argument easily that, and I talked about Hurst a lot in the offseason. I actually really liked him, but you could have made the argument that, oh, Nick, they have Tyler Boyd, they have T. Higgins, they have Jamar Chase, they got Joe Mixon. Doesn't that mean there's too many cooks in the kitchen, Nick? That's honestly wasn't that bad of an argument, but Hayden Hurst, he don't give a fuck about there being too many cooks in the kitchen. He's still getting targets. Joe Shiestey's still throwing him the ball, so I'm still going to start him. Again, I'm not claiming Hayden Hurst going to finish as like a top 5 tight end, but could he finish in the top 10 this week if he scores? Of course he could. Mark Andrews has been the clear number 1 option on this Baltimore Ravens offense. Lamar Jackson is looking like the MVP of the NFL right now. This guy is playing out of his fucking mind right now. It is crazy. And he's definitely playing for that contract, but I had an epiphany the other day where I realized that, man, Lamar Jackson's like betting on himself, but he could just get franchised, I think, 2 years in a row. So he's betting on himself this year, and he's getting franchised. Sure, he's going to be making a boatload of money, but then they're going to franchise him again, and then he'll finally get the contract. He's got like 3 prove-it deals, feeling like fucking Kirk Cousins from a couple of years ago, if you remember that. But obviously, Mark Andrews is a start. And then to close out the video, Sunday Night Football with the turn your volume down, the Las Vegas Raiders at the Kansas City Chiefs. Travis Kelce is an insta start every week. You close your eyes, you could be blind like fucking Stevie Wonder and still start Travis Kelce because he is that good. Not going to spend a million hours sucking this guy's cock metaphorically over the internet. We all know how good Travis Kelce is. Darren Waller has been hit or miss. I guess they never miss, huh? If you guys remember that, if you're a TikTok generation like myself, that's like 2 years old. It's a very old joke, but it came into my mind and I just say what I think, all right? Whenever I think something, there's no like venting process. Like there's nothing written down. The only thing written down in this video is what you guys are seeing on screen here. Raiders at Chiefs, start and sit. That's the only thing that's written down. So I just say whatever I want. So Darren Waller has been up and down. He's in and he's out. But hey, Hunter Renfrow might not play. He's still a valuable target in this offense. If the Raiders want to be a legit team, they have to compete with the Chiefs. The Chiefs are going to put up a shit ton of points. They're going to be trailing, trying to come back into the game. They're going to have to throw the ball a lot. And I think Darren Waller will benefit from that type of game script. And I think Darren Waller could definitely have a pretty solid game. So thank you guys all so much for watching today's video. If you did end up enjoying, please make sure you hit that subscribe button down below, as well as hitting that like button. It would help me out a ton. If you didn't want to follow me on Twitter, please do so at notorious FNTSY. I love you guys all so much. I hope you have a great rest of your guys' day. If you have any questions, again, make sure to ask them down below in the comment section. I love you guys all deep down. I will see you guys tomorrow with some more videos. If you haven't already seen the running back, wide receiver, or quarterback version of the start sit video, make sure you guys do check that out. I'm pumped for Thursday Night Football tomorrow. Thursday Night Football live stream, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time live every Thursday. Love you guys so much. Have a great rest of your guys' day. And as always, good boy.